A decorated police legend dies and leaves Helena Monroe a remote cabin and a locked file box. She barely knew him and never trusted him. Inside the box is a list that exposes the truth he spent a lifetime hiding and the people who will do anything to keep it buried. Listen to The Cabin List, a new Helena Monroe mystery. The Cabin List, a story by 10 Chapters Studio. Chapter 1. The Box. Helena Monroe arrived at the law office 10 minutes early, though she couldn't have explained why. She'd almost ignored the call entirely. A curt voicemail from an estate attorney informing her that Robert Alden had named her in his will. No details, no invitation to decline. Just a date, a time, and her presence, strongly recommended. She stepped into the panelled reception room, taking in the smell of leather and dusted books, the kind of curated old-world professionalism Alden had always liked to project. A framed photograph of him hung near the entrance, Alden shaking hands with the governor, his smile tight and triumphant. The caption read, "A career of integrity." Helena looked away. The attorney, a thin man with rimless glasses, led her to a small conference room. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Monroe. I understand this must be unexpected." "Unexpected is one word for it," Helena said. "I barely knew the man." He offered a polite, non-committal smile and handed her a single manila envelope. "Mr. Alden left you a property and one personal item. He wrote no letter and gave no additional instructions. It was his explicit wish that they go to you alone." Helena opened the envelope. Inside were 2 items, a deed and a small brass key. The deed listed a cabin address in Monroe County, a remote stretch of forest land she'd driven through years ago while consulting on a missing person case. She had no personal connection to the area, and certainly none to Alden. The key was old, worn, and cold, with a faded tag that read simply, "Box." "A cabin?" Helena asked. "He owned a cabin?" "For more than 30 years, the attorney replied. "It never appeared on any public documents. Taxes were paid through a private trust. Mr. Alden visited often, according to the caretaker who maintained the property." Alden's polished image flickered in her mind. The crisp uniforms, the medals, the calm, commanding voice that made other officers lean forward just to hear him finish a sentence. A cabin didn't fit that picture, not unless it was meant to be kept out of sight. "And the key?" she asked. "To the item he left inside the cabin, a box, locked." Helena slid the key into her pocket. "What kind of box?" "I wasn't told." A hesitation. "Only that he insisted you be the one to open it." Helena studied the attorney's expression. He was nervous, not fearful, but aware he'd handed her something weighty, something meant to shift hands discreetly. "Why me?" Helena asked quietly. "I don't know," he said, but he was definitive. If you refused, the cabin and its contents were to be destroyed. Helena's pulse lifted, subtle, but present. That was the first thing about Alden that made sense. The desire to control the narrative, even posthumously. But he had chosen her, of all people. Not his colleagues, not his protégés, not his family. Her. The attorney closed his folder. "The property is unlocked. The box should be on the main table, according to his instructions. If you have any questions, I'm afraid there's no one left who can answer them." Helena thanked him and stepped back into the grey November air. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching traffic pulse along the street, her breath forming small clouds. Robert Alden had always rubbed her the wrong way. That cool, curated kindness, the impeccable timing, the habit of smiling with his mouth and not his eyes. Everyone else saw steady authority. She saw performance. She didn't trust him then. She trusted him even less now. The cabin sat nearly 2 hours north, tucked between bare-limbed trees and early winter fog. Helena parked beside a sagging wooden fence and studied the front porch. A single rocking chair, an oil lamp still hanging by the door. Everything quiet. Untouched. Inside, dust lay heavy on the floors. The air smelled of cedar and disuse. A table stood in the center of the room, and on it, exactly where the attorney said, sat a wooden file box. Old, locked, waiting. Helena placed the brass key into the lock. It slid in easily. Too easily. Alden hadn't expected her to struggle with the lock. He expected her to struggle with what she'd find inside. She turned the key. The lid clicked open. And in that small, muted sound, Helena felt the unmistakable truth. Alden hadn't left her a gift. He'd left her a confession, or a warning, or both. She lifted the lid. Inside was a single notebook and a stack of photographs. And the first photograph made her go completely still, because she knew the face, and she knew exactly why Alden hadn't wanted anyone else to see it. End of chapter. Chapter 2. The First Name. The first photograph lay on top of the stack. A grainy, twilight shot, taken near a parking lot Helena recognized instantly. She'd consulted on a domestic homicide there 9 years ago, a case that had unraveled quickly, cleanly, and with little room for ambiguity. The man in the photograph was Detective Mark Rivera. Back then, Rivera had been the lead investigator, confident, sharp, charismatic. He'd shaken Helena's hand with the effortless charm of someone who was used to being admired. People trusted him. Supervisors praised him. Juries believed him. Helena had never liked him either. Rivera had a way of smiling just a second too late, as if calculating the appropriate expression before offering it. The photo showed him arriving at this very cabin in the dead of night. No timestamp, no explanation. Just Rivera stepping out of his car, looking over his shoulder with a tension she had never seen in him. Helena set the photo aside and lifted the notebook. Alden's handwriting filled the first page. Small, tight, almost obsessive. March 3rd, Rivera. Discussion. P. Shaw. Recommendation. Proceed. Note. Not safe anymore. Watch him. Helena read it twice. P. Shaw. No first name. No rank. No context. But it stirred something. She'd heard the name before. Not in a case, but in a hallway. A brief conversation between Rivera and another detective. Something about transferring a file or removing it. She'd dismissed it at the time as routine administrative chatter. Now she wasn't so sure. She flipped to the next page. March 11th, H. Kessler. Drop file. He's nervous. Keeps mentioning Monroe. Unreliable. Pull him back. Her fingers went still. Helena sat back in the wooden chair, the old cabin creaking softly under her weight. She scanned the words again. Keeps mentioning Monroe. Mentioning her? Kessler was a forensic analyst she'd worked with more than once. Competent, almost timid. He always seemed eager to please. She'd never imagined him involved in anything like this. Why was he talking about her? And why was Alden writing it down? She didn't like how the questions began to braid into each other. On the next page, the handwriting shifted, faster, pressed harder, as if Alden had been writing under stress. March 14th, X. Urgent. Not here. Not safe. They're cleaning loose ends. I'm next. No name. Just X. Helena looked at the table, steadying her breath. She needed clarity, not impressions. But impressions were quietly forming anyway. The slight metallic scent of fear she remembered from interrogations, the heavy stillness of rooms that had absorbed things no one spoke aloud. She flipped further through the notebook. Dates stretched back nearly 18 years. Names repeated: Rivera, Kessler, Shaw. A man referred to only as Len, and X. That one appeared more often than any of the others. Every page held cryptic notes. Adjust testimony. Remove witness. Shift timeline. Handled. Some entries were accompanied by photographs, others by sketches of meeting times. Near the back of the notebook, she found something different. A page torn halfway out, the handwriting shaky. If you're reading this, you already know. I didn't choose you because you admired me. I chose you because you never did. Look at the last page. Helena turned to it. A list of 5 names, written cleanly, as though Alden had regained control for this final entry. At the top, the cabin list. 1. Mark Rivera. 2. Helen Kessler. 3. Patrick Shaw. 4. Leonard Len Farron. And below them, the last name pressed harder than the rest. Finf, Commissioner Thomas Hale. A cold current ran through Helena. Hale was still in office, still powerful, still adored. Helena had consulted on a kidnapping case with him 3 years ago. He'd shaken her hand, thanked her, called her one of the sharpest minds I've ever met. She remembered feeling nothing in return, except the dim, familiar, see-through sensation she got around people who had something to hide. Alden hadn't written roles or reasons, but he didn't need to. The list was the truth stripped to its bones. The men and women who'd used this cabin for meetings, planning, covering up, deciding which cases needed adjusting. And Alden had spent his final weeks realizing they were turning on each other, turning on him. Helena closed the notebook gently, the wooden box echoing faintly as she set it down. Snow had begun to fall outside, flakes drifting against the window like ash. She was alone in the cabin. But someone else had been here recently. She could feel it. A faint disruption in the dust near the doorway, the edge of a shoe print half erased. Alden had left her the truth. But someone else knew she had it now. And Helena Monroe had never been good at pretending she didn't notice when danger started watching. End of chapter. Chapter 3. Kessler. Helena took photographs of everything before she left the cabin. The notebook, the guest book, each Polaroid spread out on the table like a grim contact sheet. She didn't touch the order Alden had left them in. She just preserved it. If someone else came looking, she wanted to know exactly what had changed. Outside, she locked the cabin door and tested it twice. On the drive back toward the city, the names on the list moved through her mind in quiet, jagged loops. She'd worked cases near all of them, sometimes with them, sometimes at the edges of their orbit. They were part of the machinery she'd stepped away from when she left the FBI and federal work behind. The overlapping circles of power, reputation, and unofficial favors. Alden had been at the center of those circles. Now he was gone. Helena didn't go home. She drove to a small coffee shop near the river. She took a corner table, set her phone in front of her, and stared at the contact list until the letters blurred. Helen Kessler. She hadn't seen him in almost a year. Their last case together had been a double homicide out in Westlake. The forensic evidence thin and stubborn. Kessler had been thorough, careful, nervous. He'd flinched when a senior officer raised his voice, but he'd done the work. She had liked him, or at least she hadn't disliked him. Now Alden's note sat in her memory like a weight. He's nervous. Keeps mentioning Monroe. Unreliable. Pull him back. Helena's thumb hovered over the call button. If Kessler had been talking about her to Alden, it meant he'd noticed something in that Westlake case, or in another, that didn't sit right. Nervous could mean guilty. It could also mean scared. She pressed the button. The phone rang twice. Monroe? Kessler's voice sounded breathless, as if he'd been moving quickly and then stopped. Wow, I wasn't expecting... hey. Hi, Kessler. She watched the street outside the window. Got a minute? For you? Of course. A beat of silence. Is this about a case? In a way. Helena took a sip of coffee she didn't want. I was wondering if you could meet. Okay. Another pause, longer this time. Is something wrong? Yes, Helena said. But I don't know if it's wrong for you yet. He exhaled sharply, a small, frayed sound. That's not ominous at all. I'll text you my address, she said. Half an hour? Okay, I'll be there. Kessler arrived late, his coat half zipped. He scanned the room and raised a hand in a hesitant wave. He looked older than she remembered. It had only been a year, but something in his face had shifted. A tension around the mouth, a faint tremor at the edge of his jaw. Hey, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. You look good. Busy, I assume. Busy enough? Helena watched him. He avoided her gaze for a second too long, then forced himself to meet it. You? He gave a thin smile. Labs never sleep. He cleared his throat. So, what's this about? You sounded different. I went to a cabin today, she said. One owned by Deputy Commissioner Alden. Kessler stilled. Whatever colour he had drained in one clean, visible wash. A cabin, he repeated. He left it to me in his will, Helena continued, along with a file box. Inside were a notebook and photos. Some of those photos were of officers arriving at that cabin at night. Rivera, Shaw, Farron, others. Kessler's hand tightened around his coffee cup. His knuckles went white. And me? He asked quietly. No, Helena said. Not that I saw. He relaxed a fraction, then tensed again, as if remembering that was not necessarily good news. What did the notebook say? His voice dropped. The chatter of the cafe seemed to recede as well. It listed meetings, Helena said. Dates, initials. Notes about adjusted evidence, removed witnesses. It also mentioned you. Kessler swallowed. What did it say? That you were nervous, Helena said. That you kept mentioning me. That Alden wanted you pulled back. His laugh came out wrong. Too loud, quickly choked off. He shook his head, eyes suddenly bright and angry. Of course he did, Kessler muttered. Why? Helena asked. Why was my name in his notes? Kessler rubbed his forehead, then dropped his hand and looked at her fully for the first time since he'd arrived. Because I made a mistake, he said. I thought telling the truth would matter. Kessler, Helena said softly. Tell me. He glanced over his shoulder, then leaned in. You remember the Westlake case? The couple in the car? She nodded. The blood pattern on the driver's seat, he said. The lab report I signed off on. His jaw clenched. I wrote 2 versions. Helena's pulse picked up. 2 versions. One matching what Rivera wanted, Kessler said, and one matching what actually happened. And which one went into the file? Helena already knew the answer. He let out a shaky breath. The one Rivera took to Alden, he said. The neat one. The career-making one. His mouth twisted. After that, I started asking questions about other cases, about the cabin, about why certain evidence kept going missing. Helena's fingers tightened around her cup. And you talked about this, she said, to Alden. I thought he could fix it, Kessler said. I was stupid. I thought he was clean. I didn't know he was the center of it. He looked down at his hands. And now, he added, they know I talked too much. Helena watched him, sensing the hairs rise at the back of her neck, that subtle, familiar warning she'd learned not to ignore. How do you know? She asked. Kessler's gaze lifted, and for the first time, Helena saw real fear there. Because, he said, someone's been in my apartment, and they didn't take anything. He paused. They just moved the box where I keep my case notes. End of chapter. Chapter 4. The Apartment. Kessler walked Helena to his car as if each step cost him something. His shoulders were tight, his breathing uneven. He stayed close to her without consciously choosing to, the way people do when fear has loosened their instincts. Helena scanned the parking lot while he unlocked the door, noting the small things. A car idling too long near the exit, a man smoking outside the laundromat, but watching nothing in particular. The faint glint of someone moving behind a sedan window, nothing overt, but enough scattered detail to make her gut tighten. Follow me? Kessler asked quietly. Yes. They drove across the city in silence. Kessler's car a beat ahead, Helena's headlights fixed on him like a tether. Traffic had thinned, leaving streets glossy with winter drizzle. When they reached his building, Helena parked one level below him and walked up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Elevators closed too many options. Kessler lived in a narrow, aging walk-up with peeling paint and a front door that didn't quite hang straight. He fumbled with the keys, missing the lock twice before getting it. You ready? He whispered. Yes, Helena said. He pushed the door open. The apartment felt cold in a way that didn't match the thermostat, the subtle wrongness of air recently disturbed. Helena stepped in first, scanning the entryway. Jackets still on the hooks, shoes in their usual line. Nothing broken, nothing stolen. People always imagined break-ins as chaos. Professionals preferred silence. Kessler hovered behind her. It was the box, he said. On the shelf. Show me. He pointed toward the small living room. His shelves were neat, each binder and case folder labeled, arranged alphabetically by year. But one space, a tight rectangle of dust and clean wood, sat empty. Helena crouched, examining the outlines. This was moved recently. Yes. Was it locked? He nodded. Always. And whoever moved it didn't break it open. No, that was worse. Breaking the lock meant urgency. Moving it meant message. Helena stood. Where's the box now? He swallowed. In my bedroom closet. I didn't know where else to put it. Show me. They walked down the hallway. Kessler opened the closet slowly, revealing a plastic storage container tucked behind winter coats. He lifted the lid. Inside was a small metal box, the lock intact, the surface unmarred. Helena exhaled. What's in it? My personal copies, he said. The reports I wrote before they were edited. Any originals? No, Alden always collected those. Helena didn't touch the box. They moved this to let you know they can reach you. I know. His voice cracked. That's why I called you. Before Alden died, I thought maybe the rot was a few people, just Rivera, or Shaw, or Farron. But if Hale's in it, Helena lifted a hand. Careful. We don't know the extent yet, not until we verify every piece. Kessler sank onto the edge of the bed. I'm not built for this, you know. I look at fibers, gunshot residue, not people circling my apartment. You're doing fine, Helena said. Fear isn't failure. It's information. He gave a soft, bitter laugh. Easy for you to say. Helena ignored the comment. She studied the room, the slightly angled dresser, the window left open just an inch. Kessler noticed her looking. I didn't open that, he said quietly. That made something settle sharply in Helena's chest. She walked over and inspected the sill, a faint smear of dirt at the edge. Not wind. Someone had braced a hand there, climbing in or out. How many people know you keep notes here? She asked. Only Alden, he whispered. I told him once, early on. I thought he would help me. Helena closed the window. He didn't. No, Kessler said. He didn't. Helena turned to him. Listen carefully. You're not safe here tonight. Kessler's eyes widened. You think they'll come back? They moved the box, Helena said. Not because they wanted what was inside, but because they wanted you to notice. That means they're watching your reactions. Kessler pressed a shaking hand over his mouth. So what do I do? Pack a bag, Helena said. Only essentials, nothing traceable. Clothing, charger, cash, if you have it. He stood too quickly, knocking a hanger off the rod. Helena steadied it without thinking. She watched him move, jittery, unfocused, ready to unravel. You're coming with me, Helena added. His head snapped up. To your place? No, she said. That's a bad idea. Anyone watching me will expect that. Then where? Helena was already dialing a number. Somewhere they won't. Kessler looked at her, searching her face for something solid to hold on to. Are you sure about this? He asked. Helena met his eyes, steady and direct. I don't take on cases I'm not willing to finish, she said. And Alden left this one to me. She put a hand on the doorknob. Let's go, she said. But as she opened the door, she froze. There was a shadow at the end of the hallway, and it moved. End of chapter. Chapter 5, The Hallway. The shadow at the end of the hallway shifted, resolving into a man standing near the stairwell door, half-turned, as if he'd been deciding whether to go up or down. He looked up at the sound of Helena's footsteps, mid-40s. Dark hair cropped short, beginning to grey at the temples. Hands in his pockets, shoulders relaxed in a way that felt practiced rather than natural. Everything about him read, ordinary tenant. Everything in Helena's body said, no, evening, he said easily. His voice carried the polished casualness of someone used to being listened to. Didn't mean to startle you. These hallways are like caves. Helena let the door close gently behind her, blocking most of the view into Kessler's apartment. She stepped forward just enough that her body was between the stranger and the door. Evening, she said. Do you live on this floor? He smiled, small and quick. Couple floors up. Friend of mine just moved in here. I got off on the wrong level. These elevators, right? I swear they shuffle you around. His shoes were clean, no scuffs on the leather. His gaze dipped to her hands, her stance, the way trained officers and certain criminals both assessed distance. Behind her, she felt Kessler tense in the doorway. "Rough night to be visiting," Helena said. "Weather's turning." "Yeah." His eyes flicked briefly to Kessler's door number. "Anyway, sorry. Didn't mean to spook anyone." He pushed through the stairwell door without waiting for a response. Helena listened for his footsteps. They were light, controlled, not the uneven clatter of someone unfamiliar with the building. He didn't hesitate between floors. He knew exactly where he was going. Kessler's voice came out in a whisper. "Do you believe him?" "No," Helena said. She waited until the stairwell sounds faded, then closed the apartment door again and locked it. "He didn't look at me," Kessler said, pacing. "Not really. Just measured you. Did you see that?" "I saw." Helena took out her phone. She hadn't called the number she'd intended yet. A former colleague who sometimes lent her access to a quiet, unofficial, safe space. "Is this connected?" Kessler asked. "The cabin, the box, the list. Him? I don't believe in coincidences that arrive in hallways right after someone tells me their notes have been moved," Helena said. Kessler scrubbed a hand over his face. "What do you want me to do?" "Finish packing," she said. "We have less time than I thought." They left the building by the back stairs. Kessler carried a single duffel, the strap cutting into his shoulder. Helena watched the alley as they emerged. The man from the hallway was nowhere in sight, but a dark sedan was idling across the street, headlights off. Helena's gaze slid over it once, then again. Driver's silhouette. No passenger. No movement to suggest a ride-share waiting for a ping. Just the still, patient presence of someone with nowhere else to be. "Keep walking," she murmured to Kessler. "Don't look." He obeyed, though she felt his panic sharpen the air. They turned the corner. Helena led him 3 blocks on foot before circling back to her car from the opposite direction, using parked vehicles and the curve of the street as cover. The sedan didn't follow. That meant either patience or backup. "Where are we going?" Kessler asked as they slid into her car. "A friend's place," Helena said. "He owes me. Can we trust him?" "No," Helena said, "but we can trust his wife, and the spare room has no street-facing windows." Kessler let out a weak chuckle that was closer to a breathless exhale. "That's specific. You'll appreciate it later." They drove in silence for a while, city lights thinning as Helena took them toward an older residential neighborhood on the edge of town. At a red light, Kessler spoke again, his voice low. "Do you think Alden was afraid?" "At the end?" "Yes," Helena said. "How can you be sure?" "He wrote things down," Helena replied. "Men like him don't document unless they're out of options." Kessler swallowed. "So this is all of them turning on each other?" "Maybe," Helena said. "Or just some deciding the old rules don't apply anymore. Power shifts. Stories get rewritten. People like you become liabilities. People like you, too," he said quietly. Helena watched the light change. "I was never part of their circle. I'm not a liability. I'm an obstacle." "That's worse," Kessler said. He wasn't wrong. They pulled up in front of a narrow house with a sagging porch. Helena cut the engine and turned to him. "Inside, you tell them as much as you can without names," she said. "They don't need to know details. Just that someone's leaning on you." "And you?" he asked. "I'm going to take another look at the notebook," she said. And then I'm going to start at the top of the list. Hale, Kessler said, the name half a question, half a dread. Helena nodded once. Won't he just deny everything? Of course, Helena said. I don't need him to confess. I just need to see what he does when he realizes Alden didn't take his secrets to the grave. She opened her door, cold air rushing in. Kessler hesitated, then followed. Helena? He said softly. She glanced back. What if they already know you've seen it? He asked. The box, the list, everything. Helena considered the sedan, the hallway man, the open window, the moved box. Pieces of a pattern coming into focus. They do, she said. She watched the fear flicker through him and then settle oddly into something steadier. Not relief, but acceptance. So, this is it? He murmured. We're in it now. Helena gave a humorless smile. We were in it, she said. The moment Alden wrote my name, she walked up the path and rang the bell. Behind her, a car turned the corner slowly. Not the sedan from earlier, a different one, and this time, the driver didn't bother to turn off the headlights. End of chapter. Chapter 6. The First Visit. The headlights washed over the street like a slow-moving tide, too bright for a neighborhood this quiet. Helena kept her body angled, so the house lights framed her, but the street stayed in her peripheral vision. She didn't turn toward the car. Predators shifted when you did. The door opened before she needed to knock again. Helena? A woman's voice, warm, alert, surprised. It's late. Maya, Helena said. We need the room. Maya didn't ask why. She stepped aside immediately, eyes flicking once to Kessler, taking him in with a single, efficient sweep. Maya had been a nurse long before she married a detective. She understood the difference between adrenaline and dread. Upstairs, she said. End of the hall. I'll get towels. Kessler followed her, clutching his duffel like someone worried it would vanish if he loosened his grip. Helena stayed on the porch a second longer. The car idled. A tinted SUV. No lights inside. No visible figure behind the windshield, but she could feel the eyes. She stepped inside and shut the door firmly, turning the lock. Evan, Maya's husband, appeared from the living room. He was still in his work clothes, plain shirt, sleeves rolled, the weariness of a shift lingering on his face. He glanced up the stairs where Kessler had disappeared. This trouble, or real trouble? He asked. Real, Helena said. Thanks for letting us land here. He nodded once. Whatever you need. You hungry? Maya made stew. Later, Helena said. I need 5 minutes alone with a table and good lighting. Evan raised an eyebrow. That kind of night. She didn't answer. She opened her bag, took out Alden's notebook, and laid it flat across the kitchen table. Evan didn't step closer. He just leaned against the counter, arms crossed, keeping watch. The notebook felt heavier than it had earlier. Helena flipped through pages, letting her eyes settle on entries she'd skimmed before. Dates, initials, notes sharpened to code. On one page, a line she'd noticed but hadn't had time to think through. Farron, replacement identified. Hale agrees. Move quietly. Replacement for what? She scanned the next pages. Meetings, disputes. One anguished scribble. R insists she knows. Remove? R. Who? A second later, the name clicked into place. Rachel Merrin. a civilian witness from a case 5 years earlier, a domestic assault turned suspicious suicide. She'd testified briefly, then vanished from the public narrative. The case had resolved neatly, too neatly. Hale had called it tragic, but conclusive. Alden had written, "Remove." Helena sat back. Her pulse settled into a more deliberate rhythm. Not fear, not yet. The rhythm of pattern recognition. Maya returned from upstairs. "He's settled. I put water on for tea. He's shaking." "He should be," Helena murmured. "He's in danger." Maya studied her a moment. "What about you?" "I've always been in danger. I'm just finally on the receiving end." Maya didn't argue. She set 2 mugs down and left Helena to work. 10 minutes later, Helena closed the notebook gently. Evan stepped closer. "So?" She shook her head. "Still too many holes." "But you have a direction." "I do." She took a folded photograph from her pocket. The grainy shot of Rivera arriving at the cabin. She stared at it a moment, the man's head half turned, eyes catching the light. Rivera had always prided himself on control, but here he looked haunted. "Helena," Evan said quietly, "there's a car on the street. It hasn't moved." "I know," she said. "You think it's them?" "I think they want us to think it is," Helena replied. "They're testing reactions, seeing who panics. Does Kessler panic?" "All the way," she said. "But panic doesn't always lead to collapse. Sometimes it leads to confessions. Anything he said useful?" "Enough to know he's telling the truth," Helena said. "But not enough to know what he's hiding." Evan nodded. "So what now?" Helena slid the photograph back into her pocket. "Now," she said, "I start with the obvious name, the one no one questions. Rivera." "No." Helena stood and grabbed her coat. "Hale?" Evan blinked. "You're going to him? Tonight?" "He's the type who behaves differently in the dark." "Helena, I'm not going for answers. I'm going to watch how he tries not to lie." "This feels like a mistake. Everything about this is a mistake," Helena said. "But it's mine to follow." She headed for the front door. Maya appeared at the landing. "Be careful with him," she warned. "People like Hale think they own every room they enter." Helena paused, hand on the doorknob. "Good," she said softly. "Then he'll underestimate the one room he doesn't." She walked out into the winter air, cold, sharp, metallic, and stepped off the porch. The SUV was still there. Only this time, as Helena passed, the window lowered 2 inches, just enough for her to see a familiar pair of eyes watching her. Mark Rivera. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just tapped once on the steering wheel, a quiet, deliberate warning, and drove away into the dark. End of chapter. Chapter 7. The Commissioner. Commissioner Thomas Hale lived in a stone-front house set back from the street, the kind of place meant to be admired in silence. Wide porch, heavy columns, a driveway lit by soft, expensive path lights, a home designed to whisper stability, confidence, prestige. Helena had been here once before, a gathering after a successful joint case years ago. She remembered the catered appetizers, the polished conversation, the way Hale moved through the room collecting admiration like it was oxygen. Tonight, all the lights were off, except one in his upstairs office. Helena parked down the street, far enough not to be noticed unless Hale was actively scanning. She walked the sidewalk slowly, casually, as though she lived nearby and belonged to the quiet night. His office window glowed a dull gold. He was awake. Good. She turned up the walkway and rang the doorbell once. Just once. People like Hale didn't appreciate impatience. They appreciated presence. Soft footsteps approached. The door opened. Hale stood framed in the shadows, wearing a sweater and tailored slacks, sleeves pushed to his elbows. His hair was slightly mussed, as though he'd been running his hand through it. Not a casual man, a calculated one. "Helena Monroe," he said, voice warm, even delighted. What an unexpected surprise. Helena met his eyes. "Evening, Commissioner." He stepped back. Come in. It's freezing out there." She didn't move. "I won't stay long." That single line, that refusal to step into his territory, made the smile falter a fraction. Of course. Hale clasped his hands lightly behind his back. "What brings you here at this hour?" Helena studied him. Polite, relaxed, curious. None of that was truth. "I received something today," she said, "from Robert Alden." A stillness passed through Hale's posture, so slight it could have been missed. But Helena had spent her career watching how people tried not to react. "My condolences," Hale said softly. "Robert spoke highly of your work." "Did he?" Helena let the coolness hang there. "He left me a cabin." "A cabin?" Hale blinked with gentle confusion. "I wasn't aware he owned property outside the city." "He kept it quiet." "Yes, well, Robert had many private interests. I'm sure whatever he left you was well intended. He also left me a locked box." Hale's expression remained unchanged, but his throat shifted. A small swallow. "What kind of box?" he asked lightly. "The kind filled with names," she said. He held her gaze. "Names?" "People he met with," Helena said. "Over the years. Late at night." Hale exhaled once, a soft huff of amusement. "Robert was meticulous. I'm not surprised he kept a list of professional contacts." Helena tilted her head. "Do you consider Mark Rivera a professional contact?" Another imperceptible pause. Helena pressed. "Leonard Farron? Patrick Shaw?" Hale's jaw tightened in a fraction of a second micro-expression he immediately smoothed out. "Those are fine officers. What is it you're suggesting?" "Nothing," Helena said. "Not yet." "And yet you're here," Hale replied. His voice had cooled, just a shade. "So, you must be suggesting something." Helena stepped half a pace closer, not enough to enter the house, but enough to make him shift back. "In the box," she said, "Alden wrote that he feared one of those names would clean up loose ends. Do you know what he meant?" Hale's gaze dropped, pretending to think, a rehearsed move. "I'm afraid I don't. Commissioner," Helena said quietly. "He wrote that the meetings at the cabin stopped because one of them turned on him." Hale looked up sharply. She watched the breath move in his chest. "He was paranoid at the end," Hale said smoothly. "His health was declining. He made mistakes." "Did he?" "Yes." Hale's voice sharpened. "And I think it's dangerous to put weight on the ramblings of a dying man. Ramblings." There it was. Alden had accused someone, and Hale was already positioning himself away from it, not startled, not confused, prepared. "Which one was it?" Helena asked softly. "Excuse me? You said he made mistakes. Which officer was he wrong about?" Hale's eyes chilled. "That's enough, Monroe." Helena held his gaze. "Alden trusted you until the end. He wrote your name last on the list. Hale stilled completely. Did he? He said. Not a question. A statement. A confirmation disguised as dismissal. Helena stepped back. I'll let you get back to your night. You should, Hale said. It's late. She turned away from the porch and walked down the path. Halfway to the sidewalk, Hale called after her, voice drifting through the cold. Helena? She stopped. Be careful who you repeat, Roberts. Stories, too, he said calmly. You don't want to be misunderstood. She didn't turn around. I'm comfortable being misunderstood. Yes, Hale replied with the faintest hint of warning. That's what worries me. She walked to her car without looking back. At the end of the street, a dark SUV rolled slowly through the intersection. Not Rivera's. This one she didn't recognize, but it slowed when it passed her. And inside, for a split second, she saw a pale face turn toward her, someone watching, someone she'd never met. Which meant whoever they weren't done with her yet. End of chapter. Chapter 8. The Missing Witness. Helena drove away from Hale's Street without letting her eyes linger too long in any mirror. She took 3 unnecessary turns, looped through a residential block, and drove through the lot of a closed hardware store just to see which cars followed. 2 did. 1 peeled off after the first turn. The second stayed. Not close, not obvious, just steady. Helena didn't speed up. She didn't change lanes abruptly. She kept her movements smooth, the way you drive when you know someone is studying you. 2 blocks later, she ducked into a well-lit gas station, pulling up beside a pump. She parked, but didn't get out. If the tail was casual, it would continue past without slowing. It didn't. It turned in, too slow, too deliberate. She counted to 3, then pulled back onto the road in one clean, silent motion. By the time she reached Evan and Maya's block again, the tail was gone. Good, or worse. Sometimes it was hard to tell the difference. Inside, Maya had settled Kessler in the spare room. His voice drifted faintly through the floor. Low, tense, pacing. Evan stood in the kitchen with the notebook open in front of him, arms braced on the table. You okay? He asked. Not even a little, Helena said. She dropped her keys in a bowl near the door and sat. Evan slid the notebook toward her, tapping a page she hadn't examined closely yet. Found something you missed. Helena leaned in. It was an entry from 5 years ago, a name written only once. R. Merrin. Problem. Witness unreliable. Remove. Rachel Merrin, Evan said. The suicide. Helena nodded slowly. Domestic assault turned self-inflicted gunshot, except the trajectory didn't quite line up. I remember, Evan said. Kessler flagged it as questionable. Rivera overrode him. And Hale signed off on the report, Helena murmured. She flipped the page. Alden's follow-up note looked rushed. Assumed done. No further meetings. Evan sank into the chair across from her. If they removed a witness, they didn't need to kill her, Helena said. They only needed to rewrite the story. Evan frowned. What do you mean? Rachel Merrin didn't have family nearby, Helena said. Her only friend was the neighbor who called the police when she heard the first argument. That neighbor moved 2 months later. Quietly. You think they threatened her? Evan asked. I think they didn't need to. They just needed to show up and explain how things were going to look. Helena reached for her own phone and typed quickly, pulling up an old case archive. Rachel Merrin. Age 29. Graphic designer. Boyfriend with a history of escalating aggression. Case closed within 48 hours. There were only 2 photos included, one of the apartment exterior, one of Rachel smiling with sunlight in her hair. She had a bright, open face, the kind that made people believe they knew her even if they didn't. Evan spoke softly. Helena, why bring this up now? Why would Rachel matter to Alden's final confession? She doesn't, Helena said. Not alone. She's one piece in a pattern he finally decided to reveal. She closed the notebook. If Alden referenced her only once, it means she wasn't part of the core circle. She wasn't someone they trusted. She was an inconvenient outsider who saw something. Evan leaned back. So she didn't commit suicide? No, Helena said. She survived. Evan stared at her. How do you know? Helena pulled the notebook toward her again, flipping to the date after the Rachel entry. Alden had written 2 words that seemed meaningless when she'd first skimmed them. Relocated. Stable. If she were dead, Helena said, Alden wouldn't need to write stable. That's language from witness protection, the unofficial kind. The quiet relocation the department used before the program existed statewide. You think she's alive? Evan whispered. I think she's hiding, Helena said. And I think she was never supposed to be found. Kessler appeared in the doorway, pale and clutching a mug. Who's hiding? Rachel Merrin, Helena said. 5 years off the map, and now suddenly relevant again? Kessler swallowed. Because she's one of the few people who knows what they've done. And because, Helena said, if Alden wrote her name in this notebook, it means he didn't trust the others to keep ignoring her. Kessler sank into a chair. So what now? Now, Helena said, standing, I find her. And then what? Kessler asked. Then, Helena murmured, I find out who wanted her gone. Farron, Shaw, Rivera. Kessler hesitated. Or Hale. Helena nodded once. Or Hale. The room went still again. Then Maya walked in, holding a phone with a strange look on her face. Helena, she said. A woman left a voicemail on our landline for you. She didn't leave a name. She sounded scared. She said. Maya swallowed. She said, they found me. Helena felt the chill roll through her chest. Rachel Merrin wasn't missing. She was running, and someone had caught up. End of chapter. Chapter 9. The Call. The voicemail was only 12 seconds long, but it played in Helena's mind with the weight of an hour. Helena Monroe, if this is still your number, they found me. I don't know where else to. A sharp inhale, a rustle, a muffled thud. Please, then silence. No background identifiers, no traffic, no voices, just fear wrapped in breath. Helena replayed it twice, once with her eyes closed, once standing near the window where the cold seeped through the glass. She used your name, Maya said quietly behind her. She shouldn't even know it, Helena murmured. Kessler paced the length of the living room like a caged thing. She's alive. She's alive. And she called you. Why would she... How did she... She wasn't supposed to exist, Helena said. Not officially. Not in any system. Alden must have contacted her once. Or someone else from the circle did. Kessler paused mid-step. If they know where she is... They do, Helena said. The room went still. Does that mean they know you're involved? Evan asked. Yes. Helena focused on the voicemail again, listening to the rhythm of it, the timing. 12 seconds was short. Too short for someone in full panic. It wasn't breathless rambling. It was controlled terror. Rachel had waited until she thought she had a window. She'd planned to speak. She just didn't have enough time. Helena opened her laptop. I need to filter the audio. There might be something buried under the noise. She sent the file through a spectral analyzer, adjusting the levels. A faint hum appeared. Low, mechanical, steady. Air conditioner, Evan suggested. Too uniform, Helena said. Commercial, not residential. Probably a hotel or a motel. Kessler's voice shook. There are thousands. Helena didn't answer. Instead, she isolated the last 2 seconds. The muffled thud. She amplified it. Metal. Hollow. A door, not a wall. Then another faint sound. A rapid chirp. Helena froze. She knew that sound. Not from an audio file, but from memory. A warped electronic chime, uneven, a half-second delay before the click. She'd heard it before, not in the city. On the highway north, where the air smelled of wet asphalt and mildew, and the motels clung to the edges of the woods like tired survivors. The cheap ones still used those old card locks, the kind that coughed before opening. She didn't need a database to find it. There were only 3 places left like that, all along the same stretch of road leading toward Alden's cabin. She already knew which one it would be. She reached for her coat. Kessler shot up. You're going after her alone? Yes. No. Absolutely not. Helena turned to him. You can't come. You're compromised. You're scared. I'm not. You are, she said calmly. And that's normal. But fear makes noise. Noise gets people killed. Kessler flinched, but he didn't argue again. Evan stepped forward. Let me come. No, Helena said. They know you live here. If something happens, Maya needs you here. Maya nodded softly, her hand resting on her husband's arm. Helena adjusted the strap of her bag. What if it's a trap? Maya whispered. It is, Helena said. Everything about this is a trap. But Rachel didn't call me to die alone. She reached for the door. Kessler's voice stopped her. Helena, if you find her, what then? The others... I'm not looking for the others tonight, Helena said. Tonight is about one woman who tried to stay alive long enough to make one phone call. And tomorrow? Kessler asked. Tomorrow, Helena said, is for whoever comes after me. She stepped out into the cold. The drive north blurred past her windows. Dark trees, empty fields, the occasional gas station glowing like a solitary lantern. Snow began to fall in streaks across her windshield. When she reached the faded motel, the neon sign buzzed dimly, half the letters out. Loigt. Helena parked at the edge of the lot, where shadows swallowed the lighting. She cut the engine and waited, letting her eyes adjust. 2 cars in the lot. 1 beat-up sedan. 1 SUV with government plates covered in road dust. Her pulse deepened, slow and steady. Hale, Rivera, Farron, Shaw. Someone was already here. She stepped out of the car, her boots crunching softly over thin snow. She didn't approach the rooms directly. She moved along the far side of the building, keeping to the blind spots between lights. At the corner, she heard it. A soft, stifled cry. Then a voice. Low. Male. Commanding. Open the door, Rachel. You can still walk out of this. Helena's body went still. Room 14. Second door from the end. She edged closer, staying behind the concrete pillar, breath tight. A second voice spoke. Tired, trembling, female. Please, please don't. Helena recognized it instantly. The voicemail. Rachel Merrin. The male voice responded, lower now, almost gentle. You should never have called her, Rachel. Helena stepped into the hallway, gunmetal calm, silent feet. Her hand closed around the small tactical flashlight in her coat. She approached the door. Inside the room, someone shifted. Someone she knew. Helena Monroe won't get here in time, the man said. Helena tapped her flashlight once against the doorframe, a metallic click that cut through the silence. Oh, she said quietly. I already did. End of chapter. Chapter 10. The Cabin List. The hallway froze the moment Helena's voice cut through the air. A sharp, purposeful stillness. The kind that only comes from someone realizing the plan has shifted and they have seconds to recalibrate. Helena didn't wait. She stepped fully into the doorway of room 14, flashlight in her left hand, angled low, her right hand loose, but ready. She didn't need a gun to own a room. She only needed to see it clearly. Inside, the scene sharpened. Rachel Merrin was pressed into the corner, knees pulled to her chest, hair damp with sweat. Her eyes were wide, shocked, but alive. Standing between them, blocking Rachel's escape, was Patrick Shaw. He looked older than Helena remembered. His once pristine posture had collapsed into something sharper, hungrier. His jacket was thrown over a chair, sleeves rolled, tie missing. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. He wasn't surprised to see Helena. He was only annoyed. "Monroe," he said with exasperated calm. "You always did have terrible timing, and you always did have terrible instincts," Helena said, stepping slowly to the side to widen her angle. "Move away from her." Shaw shook his head, almost pitying. "You shouldn't be here. You don't understand what Alden started." "I understand enough," Helena said. "The cabin, the meetings, the cover-ups." Shaw's jaw tightened. He was protecting the department. He was protecting himself. "No," Shaw snapped. "He was protecting the work. All of us. Rivera, Farron, Hale. This system doesn't survive honesty, Monroe. You know that." Helena tilted her head. "Then why kill Rachel?" Shaw's face flickered with something between anger and something darker. Loyalty warped into desperation. "She wasn't supposed to talk," he said. "She had a new life, a clean slate. She should have stayed quiet." "She did," Helena said, "until Alden died." Shaw's eyes twitched, a small, telling wince. There it was, the piece she needed. "You thought Alden told her something?" Helena said softly. "Or worse, left her something. Something that incriminated you." Shaw didn't answer. He didn't need to. Behind him, Rachel let out a small, involuntary sob. Shaw took half a step toward her. Helena moved. Not a charge. Just a shift. A change of balance. A step that placed her directly in his peripheral vision. Enough to break his focus. "You're surrounded, Shaw," Helena said calmly. His eyes darted to the hallway. "I don't hear backup, because I didn't bring any." Shaw's brow furrowed. Helena smiled faintly. "Which means no one else knows you're here either." For the first time, doubt cracked his expression. "Rachel?" Helena said, voice steady but gentle. "Stay still. Don't move." Rachel gasped. "Please," Shaw snapped. "Quiet." Helena watched everything. The tension in his fingers, the way his weight shifted to his back foot, the slight tremor in his jaw. He wasn't preparing to fight. He was preparing to flee. "Where's Rivera?" Helena asked quietly. "Not here," Shaw said. Farron? No. Hale? Shaw's laugh was dry. Hale doesn't show up in motels. That's what Rivera and I are for. And Alden? Helena asked. The laugh died instantly. Alden betrayed us, Shaw said. He thought he could control the circle. But once he started writing things down... You realized you couldn't trust him, Helena finished. So you turned on him. Shaw's silence was confirmation. Helena took one slow, deliberate step closer. Tell me who else was at the cabin the night before Alden died. Shaw's jaw clenched. No. Helena's voice softened to a scalpel-weight whisper. What did Hale tell you to do? Shaw flinched. The first real crack. Enough. Helena moved. A flash of light to the eyes, her tactical flashlight angled upward, bright and sudden. Shaw instinctively shielded his face, stumbling half a step to the side. That was all she needed. Helena swept forward, catching his wrist, twisting downward, using his own momentum to pull him to the ground. She wasn't stronger. She didn't need to be. She was trained. Shaw hit the carpet with a grunt. Helena pinned him with her knee, grabbing both his wrists. Rachel, she said sharply. Out! Rachel scrambled past them into the hallway, breath sobbing in her throat. Shaw writhed once, then stopped. You think this changes anything? He spat. You think Hale will let this stand? Hale doesn't know you're here, Helena said. But he will when he reads the report. Shaw laughed, unhinged. There won't be a report. You don't have jurisdiction. No, Helena said. But the press does. And Alden's box speaks louder than you ever will. Shaw stilled. For the first time, true fear crossed his face. Not fear of arrest, fear of exposure. You can't take all of us down, he whispered. There are more names than you know. Helena leaned in. Then you should have written less down. Outside, police sirens began approaching. Faint at first, then louder. Helena had called them the moment she stepped into the hallway, her phone in her coat pocket streaming an open line. Shaw's eyes widened as reality settled in. You'll regret this, he hissed. No, Helena said, standing as officers rushed in. You will, they cuffed him. Rachel collapsed against a wall, shaking. Helena stepped back, letting the chaos shift around her. And in the midst of flashing lights, buzzing radios and muffled sobs, she felt it. The list wasn't finished. Alden had left her the cabin, the box, the names. But one name was missing. X, the unknown one, the most frequent visitor, the mind behind the circle. Shaw, Rivera, Farron, Hale. They were pieces. X was the architect. Helena stepped into the cold night air, breath fogging in the red-blue glow. Rachel was safe. Shaw was in custody. But somewhere, not far, X was watching to see what she would do next. And Helena Monroe did the one thing he didn't expect. She looked up at the dark tree line and whispered to the night, I'm coming. End of chapter and end of book. Like and subscribe to support our channel and to listen to more intriguing investigative stories.